It was probably during my senior year in high school when I was introduced to the idea that visual storytelling, photojournalism, could be a possible career path. Now, I had worked for several years on our high school's publication staff, both the newspaper and yearbook, and had had a great time, with friends of mine, learning what it meant to be creative on deadline. And in the midst of that was one key individual, our advisor, Betsy Metter. Ms. Metter always encouraged us to realize what it was we were doing, that we were playing an important role in our community, that we were helping to make our audiences a little bit more aware, that we were helping to provide a little deeper understanding of what was going on. So not long after I graduated from high school, I headed toward Arkadelphia, Arkansas, Ouachita Baptist University, and 4 years later graduated from there, having worked pretty much as I did in high school on the publication staff there, the newspaper, yearbook, and also the university staff, providing images to help tell Ouachita's story. After Ouachita, worked commercially as a photographer, did freelance work, actually did pretty much anything that someone would hire me to do. And I never will forget the afternoon that Carol and I, my wife and I, went down to our church and met with our pastor, Dr. Nathan Porter, there at First Baptist Church, Arkadelphia, and had one primary question to ask Dr. Porter. We wondered if there was actually a place within the context of Christian communications for a photojournalist. And I never will forget the moment that he turned his great big leather chair around and he pulled a magazine off the shelf and handed it to me. And on the cover of this magazine, called Missions USA, a publication that was produced by the Home Mission Board at the time, on the cover of that magazine was a photograph by Don Rutledge. And as I opened the magazine and flipped the pages, I saw one photograph after another that answered the question that I had asked. Dr. Porter really didn't need to say much more. It was right there in my hands. The answers were right there. It was a moment that I never will forget. And little did I know at that time that in the coming years, Don Rutledge and a host of others involved in this field would become close friends of ours. And the impact of that moment is one that runs really, really deep, and I never will forget it. So I'm going to share with you just a few of the things that I look at when I'm looking at my work. When I'm critiquing, editing my work, here are a few things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a moment. I'm looking for a moment that it's not just a random thing. It's not just a moment of laughter or something like that, but it is a moment that shows a relationship, a key relationship between the individuals involved in this story. Now, it could involve a laugh, it could involve a hug, it could involve just a simple touch, it could involve an expression or a raised eyebrow. It could involve a lot of things that are hidden in the detail of an image. But a moment is a very carefully sought after thing. It's not something that happens quickly. You don't just walk into a situation and snap, you've got a moment. Most often, capturing a moment takes time. It takes discipline. It takes, a commitment to find that moment within a situation. It's not easily found. It's not just on the surface. It's not low-hanging fruit that we just reach up and grab. It's something we find after usually great consideration. Moment is really important. That you capture that significant moment that's going to reach your audiences and help them to see and understand the story in a deeper way. So moment is a big thing. I think capturing relationships within your photographs is very important. They may not all be the great moments, but you show the important relationships within your story. You show how this story works. You show how these people work together, and why one person is important to another, and why this group is important to this event. You show, you carefully think through in advance the things that you need to be aware of. Some may be discovered on the spot. You've got to be careful in your planning not to plan so much that you don't see what you need to see. You need to be able to see the serendipitous, spontaneous moment as well, because sometimes those very unplanned things are the very best things. But I usually in advance consider the things that I need to be aware of and just to be on the lookout for, even if something else surfaces. I'm aware of those relationships that I need to be thinking about. So when a certain person comes in the room, I'm aware that they're there and I'm watching what they do, and I'm very aware of the circumstance. So relationships are very key. Of course, the light that is involved can often help to shape a beautiful image. It's interesting, I've heard photographers say that you give me some beautiful light and I'll find you a fantastic photograph. And I can relate to that. Sometimes you wake up really early in the morning, or you go out for a late afternoon walk and the shadows are really long and it seems like everywhere you look there's a beautiful photograph. Light does have a huge impact on the success of your photographs, but it's something that you learn to see as time goes by. Your sensitivity to light, I think, develops over a period of time, and it's something that I'm still working on. I still go out very often and don't see something that someone else comes in with a photograph of. I think, where did you get that? And they say, well, it's just right out here, and I missed it completely. So it's something that you're always, working on is that awareness of light. I think perspective is important, that you're able to bring to your subject something new, something fresh, something they've not seen before. If you were to take everything just from, for me, 5 feet 11 inches tall, if I took everything from my eye level, it would look very normal. It would just be from, that perspective, and it wouldn't be anything really new. But it's interesting, as soon as I begin to bend over, or as soon as I step up on something a little bit higher, the image begins to transform and begins to look a little different. And so often, in order to capture the imagination of our audiences, all we need to do is change our perspective just a little bit lower, a little bit higher, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, and we'll see a big difference in our photographs. Sometimes, a big change can make a big difference, but perspective, the perspective that you select, the exact spot where you position that camera is very, very important to the success of your photograph. Regardless of the situation you're in, that positioning of your camera is really, really important. The composition that you build is critical as well. And composition, of course, is just the way that all things are organized within your frame. Another way of looking at it is a composition is built of elements that you have elected to leave in that frame. You have deliberately decided that these are going to stay inside the composition, and at the same time you've eliminated some. Some are gone, they're not there, they're outside the boundaries of that rectangle. So you have elements that you've allowed to be inside your composition, inside your frame, and then you change your perspective, you might change lenses. There's a lot of things you might do to alter the position of those things within your frame. And then on top of that, you might still, even after you've built this great composition, you might still have to wait on the moment to make the photograph. You might make a photograph, and another, and another, and another, and another, and none of those photographs are just right. And then one person enters the scene and changes everything. And click, you make one more photograph, and that's it. You've taken all those photographs that were compositionally very similar, but one person, one thing changed that composition just a little bit, and now you've got a winner. So that can be a big thing too. And putting your images together is a willingness to wait on that moment again. And then there's one other thing that to me is the one that wins out. To me, it is the one that's pretty much at the top of the heap, and that is content, the power of content. You can have a beautiful composition, you can have beautiful lights, you can have a fun moment, you can have a lot of things, But if the content doesn't relate to your story, if there's not a direct connection between that photograph and the story that you're trying to tell, what you're trying to say, then you've created a beautiful photograph that's probably going to be forgotten in just a few minutes. But if you make a photograph that has solid content, even if there may be flaws in your composition, there might be things about it that you would change, but if you've got really relevant, solid content in that photograph, very likely that's going to be a photograph that will be remembered. Of course, the ideal thing is to have a relevant content at an amazing moment, beautiful light, well thought out composition. You've waited, you've captured that instant in time. You've thought through your perspective, you've done all these things, and wow, you've got this beautiful thing. And I know that the hard part about this is that often all those things have to occur very, very quickly because the moments are passing, the time is passing. You don't have a lot of time to spend on it. It just happens real quickly. And I agree. It's not easy, but it is amazing. The more you do it, the more quickly you can assess things, and you come out with these great photographs. So the lists may be different, but those are some things that have been important to me. And work on your own list. Think about things that are important to you on a particular story, and go after them and just see what happens. I'm pretty certain that it will have an impact on the success of your images. Of course, we all have technology to consider and to learn more about. Technology is changing all around us. The equipment is changing, the applications, the programs, the processes. So many things are changing, and we need to be pretty much up to date on a lot of this because it's going to have a direct impact on how relevant we are in the time that we're living and working in. So those are very important. But I think that beneath all that is a foundation of other material that we need to consider and think about. And I know that my list of things that are important in my work is probably different than the list of others. But here are just a handful of things that have been important in the work that I do and have done over the years. I heard a friend of mine speaking to a large group of people when he said that before he went out on a photo assignment, that he would always pray that God would lead him to the very subject, to the very moment that needed to be photographed that day to go into their publication. And every time he went out, he always prayed first before he ever started. And I think, prayer has been a part of the work that we all do. I think probably especially when we're on a really short deadline and the night is getting long, and maybe sunrise is coming soon, and we're hoping that we can somehow meet the deadline in a way that will be acceptable, and we pray that God will just get us through it. So we've all done that, but praying from the beginning that what we do will be what God wants done, so that the story, the project will be His and not just ours. I think that's a good way to start out. Another thing is throughout the process of our work, throughout the process of an assignment or a project, if we guard and protect the relationships that are involved, both the relationships at home, because I think it does start there, the relationships at work, our coworkers, and the relationships throughout the assignment, those that assist with logistics, those that end up being the subjects of the things that we work on. All of those many, many relationships, we need to really guard those, because we really don't know what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen in the coming years. And it could be that a relationship will become very important again, not just to us, not only to us, but to them. That somehow in the future something is going to occur that's going to be very relevant that never would have happened had we not really guarded and taken care of that relationship, when we did our work, when we did that assignment. So I think relationships are really key and important. Another thing is to ask questions along the way. How many times have we gone out on an assignment and had that assignment completely change direction because of a question that we asked? So I think it's important to ask questions so we can be as on target with our work as possible. And then the flip side of that is to really listen. Not just listen to the answers to our questions, but listen to everything that's going on around us, the conversations, the noises, the music, the sounds, everything that's going on. We just need to listen intently. Those things that we hear can literally be the shapers of the next steps that we take in our work. Another thing that I think we need to make a part of our work life is a willingness to take a risk, try something different than the way we tried it last year. We know that last year worked. We know that yesterday it worked. But what if we did it a different way? What if we tried to go beyond the way that we did it last time? I think that could be an amazing thing. Now it's risky to take a risk because you could fail, and especially on a short deadline. And most of us live on short deadlines. Taking a risk on a short deadline, wow! What if you fail? What if there's a problem? Well, I believe that the very best work that we can ever do out there probably involves a level of risk. It's doing something different. It's trying something the way you've never tried it before. And sometimes you're going to be right up against it, and it's going to be a little scary to do these things. But I think that's where the biggest successes reside. That's where they live. It's in taking that chance and doing it not just the way you did it before because you know it'll come out well or come out okay, come out acceptable, but trying it in a new way so that it will end up outstanding. And so I think a willingness to take a risk is a big thing. And then one last thing is I think for all of us, we had wonderful imaginations when we were little. It was no problem for us to be really creative and imaginative, when we were a little short person. We could do it without a problem. But as we began to grow, we began to be more and more like others. We wanted to be like others, and we wanted to look the way they looked. We wanted to eat what they ate. We wanted to be like those we saw on television. We wanted to just be with the crowd, and sort of year by year as we got older and older, we became less and less like the way God made us, and more like someone else. And then by the time we graduate from a few schools and finally get a job, wow, we haven't had a truly imaginative thought in years. So I think sometimes what's needed is to exercise our imaginations just like we exercise our physical bodies. Just like you go to a wellness center and work out, I think it's a deliberate process to exercise your imagination. And it can be as simple as just taking a new way to work, going home a new way, going out for a drive on an afternoon or a weekend, go somewhere you haven't been before, deliberately get lost and leave your GPS system at home, go to a gallery, listen to some music you've heard about, but you've never really wanted to listen to it, watch a movie that you thought once upon a time might be really good. Well, watch it, and just try some things that you've not tried in a long time, or maybe never have before. I would say that probably those in your field that you really respect, those that you would pay to go listen to, those that you love to read their blogs, very likely those are risk takers. They are the risk takers in your field. They're the ones that don't do things the way it's been done before. They create the new ideas, the new ways of doing things. And I think it would be a pretty neat place to visit sometime. That place of imagination that we just don't go there very often. But I think there's a lot of amazing things to be found there, and some amazing successes, and I think it can really make you feel good, and it can take you back years and years just to just to visit that place.